guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and I have here the Pantech crossover from AT&T and the LG Phoenix also from AT&T. Both of these are mid-range Android smartphone devices. The crossover is actually Pantech's first Android smartphone, and then the Phoenix is the AT&T version of the LG Optimus One, which is available on pretty much every carrier nowadays, the Optimus T, the Optimus S on T-Mobile and AT&T, and they've proven to be great mid-range Android smartphones. So if you're on AT&T, which phone should you consider, the crossover or the Phoenix? You know, both the same caliber device. Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this dogfight. We're going to put them head to head and see which one is better. Before we get on to the dogfight, I had to say special thanks to our friends at Best Buy Mobile. Well, the reason why we thank Best Buy Mobile is because they send us free phones that we can add to our One Paw Bandit game, which is a game where you can win free phones. One of the great things about Best Buy Mobile is that when you buy a phone for them, you don't have to worry about the rebate. The price on the tag is a price you pay, so no trying to calculate the actual price or waiting 6 to 8 weeks to get the rebate. All you do is pay the price on the tag, and that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. So thank you, Best Buy Mobile, for being so awesome. Thank you guys for watching this video. It's a dogfight between the Pantech crossover and the LG Phoenix, both on AT&T. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com. Let's go check it out. Okay, so here we go with the Pantech crossover on the left and the LG Phoenix on the right. Before we get started, I want to let you guys know that I usually use a microphone for these videos. However, the battery for my microphone went dead, so I'm just using the microphone and the camcorder. I understand there's kind of a clicking noise, so I'm sorry if that's annoying. Hopefully it will be only temporary, but I just want to apologize for that. So anyway, here we go with these two phones, both mid-range Android devices from AT&T. They both ship with Android 2.2. And as you can see, they also both use custom UIs by their respective manufacturers. So we'll just take a look at these custom UIs and then compare them both. First of all, we'll start with the LG Phoenix. And the UI that LG has created for their phones, at least these, it's definitely one of the more lighter UIs. It's not very heavy. Basically what they've added is this custom dock at the bottom, which you can customize. You can change these shortcuts. And then the app drawer is a little different. It's categorized. You have your downloads and then any applications that came with the phone. And the notification bar has these toggle buttons. But you know, the color scheme is very similar to stock Android. Not a whole lot of changes here. And then if we go to the messaging interface, again, you know, it basically looks like stock Android with just some subtle differences. And then going to, you know, this menu, just subtle differences here in, you know, the icons. But overall, obviously there are some visual changes, but still it's not too much. It's a very light UI, and they've added just a couple of widgets. I think memo pad, messaging, music, and then the clock and weather widget. So, you know, very well designed. I think LG did a good job of adding, you know, just enough to make Android more pretty, a little more visually appealing, but then, you know, not too heavy. They didn't change Android too much. But, you know, definitely a well-designed UI, whereas, you know, the Pantech crossover, it's definitely a more heavy UI. I think Pantech customized pretty much every visual aspect of Android with their UI. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you don't like heavy UIs, the Phoenix is probably the better choice, because if we take a look at the UI on the crossover, like I said, it's basically everything is changed. So you have a dock at the bottom. You can't customize this dock. Those shortcuts are by default and you can't change them. The app drawer, kind of a different design. If we take a look at the notification bar, you know, this is all a redesign. The toggle buttons, you know, new design, more prominent, and you have a different color scheme here. And if we go to the menu to add stuff to the home screen, I mean, this is completely different, and Pantech has added a lot of new widgets, bookmark, clock, calendar, and then within these options, there's several options, you know, several different styles for each widget. So here we have 15 clock options, you know, anything from analog to digital and dual clocks. So they've just added, you know, a lot of custom elements. And again, you know, that's not a bad thing, because I think this UI is very well designed. You know, I think a lot of thought was put into it in terms of, you know, the visual aspect of it. They didn't just add features for the sake of, you know, adding features. They actually made Android look very interesting and very cool. But then, you know, keep in mind, it is kind of a heavy UI. And, you know, go to the messaging interface. completely different than stock Android. So if you don't like heavy UIs, the crossover is probably not the best choice. I accidentally pushed a button. So if you don't like heavy UIs, the crossover is probably not the best choice. The UI on the LG Phoenix is definitely a lot lighter. But then again, I think they're both very well designed. I think the UI on the crossover is great. They added a lot of nice elements. Their custom widgets are very well designed. So just kind of depends on what you prefer. So if we take a look at these displays here, they're both kind of smaller devices. The crossover has a 3.1-inch display, and the LG Phoenix has a 3.2-inch display. So, in terms of numbers, not a whole lot of difference there. And then, the resolution, again, is kind of low. Phoenix has a resolution, actually they both have a resolution of 320 by 480, so kind of a low resolution. Text is going to be a little pixelated when you get close to it, and graphics may be kind of rough. But again, they're both mid-range phones, so you kind of expect that. So if we move on to the hardware design of both of these, you can see they're very different designs. The crossover has this sporty kind of rugged look to it. It's not a rugged smartphone, so I'm not entirely sure why they made it so rugged looking, because it's thick and kind of bulky and heavy, but that actually doesn't add anything in terms of the rugged nature, whereas the Phoenix is more slim, kind of looks a little more stylish. Again, a lot of this depends on what you prefer. I mean, you may like the sporty look of the crossover, but obviously it is a lot thicker because it has the physical keyboard, and the Phoenix doesn't. But to me, the Phoenix is a little more slim and sleek. The design to me looks a little nicer, but just pointing out what they both look like, and then you can decide which one you prefer. On the front here, obviously they both have the typical Android buttons. The Phoenix, all 4 of them are physical buttons, whereas on the crossover you have 2 capacitive touch buttons and then 2 physical buttons. Dedicated camera button. The Phoenix does not have a dedicated camera button, which personally is a bummer to me, because for one thing, I don't understand why manufacturers don't add that. And also, I just prefer having the camera button so that whenever I'm taking a picture and I can do the half press for focus, I prefer having that. To me, I think it helps out whenever I'm using the camera. But, it may not bother everyone, but this phone does have the dedicated camera button. Micro USB charging port. The crossover also has these 2 buttons on top. This is the lock button, but then you have a function button, and if you hold it down, it'll take you to a list of shortcuts that you can pre-program. So a nice feature there. And then on the Phoenix, just the volume rocker button, the power button, and the 3.5mm headphone jack, which is also on the top of the crossover. If we take a look on the back, they both have cameras, obviously. The Phoenix has a 3.2 megapixel camera, and the crossover has a 3 megapixel camera. Both have autofocus, and camera quality was generally about the same. I think when you get into this caliber device and same megapixel count, 3 megapixels, picture quality is about the same. Clear, color saturation was decent, but then again, it's not really going to be good for much other than quick snapshots you can upload to Twitter or Facebook. I wouldn't really recommend either one for taking great pictures that you're going to use for your family photo album. Of course, I think that's the given, but for the caliber of the device, the cameras were decent, but didn't really exceed my expectations. Again, I do like that the crossover has that dedicated camera button, but like I said, it's personal preference.